Hi, welcome to Chad's Silversmithing. First, thanks for visiting my channel. I appreciate you coming. If you'd make sure to hit the like button before you leave, that helps me out a lot. I'd also love to have you subscribe. I have lots of content here, approaching 130 videos, and great place for a beginner or someone who's got a little more experience to get ideas from. So make sure to subscribe. I wanted to give a special shout out to a number of new patrons over on Patreon. I have Amanda B, Jacqueline, Laura S, Wendy C, and Dee Dee Lisi. So I wanted to thank them for their patronage, and I appreciate their support. Those are the people who make this kind of stuff possible for me to do. So thank you again. If you're interested in that or some of my other links, check out my video description. There's a link for Patreon where we have lots of interesting content going up all the time. There's a link for my website if you care to check out some of the creations I've made and maybe buy one. You know you deserve it. And finally, there's a Buy Me a Coffee link if you just want to contribute because you appreciate what I'm doing here. So feel free to visit those if you'd like, or not. It's fine with me. So today I wanted to talk about making box clasps, and I have a few designs I was going to show you. I was going to show a real basic one and then a couple of fancier ones that I made earlier just to show you some possibilities. So we'll do one live and then I'll show you some other ones. So stay tuned. Let's talk about some materials we're going to do. We're going to do kind of a basic box clasp, nothing too fancy, and then I'll show you some little bit fancier ones that I kind of appreciate. So for materials, as always, I'm going to use hard silver solder, and Mighty Flux is the type of flux that I use, comes from Rio Grande. Most of this for the box clasps is going to involve different types of sheet. I'm going to use some 26, some 22, probably not 18 on this one, but those are the common gauges that I usually keep around. I will probably also use a little bit of 18 gauge round and some 14 gauge square, and so yeah, I don't think we'll need too much more than that. So let's get started. I've kind of sketched out what the basic design I'm going to be doing here. So hopefully you can see this. I'm in the right spot here. It's going to be two components. This will actually be the box over here, and then this will be a little springy clip that pops into place there, and this will be kind of a button on top that you push to release it. So we need to build a box first, and then we'll make this little part here with a little button on it. So this is kind of a basic one. It should make a pretty clean, nice looking one though, especially if you have a nice clean angular bracelet you're going to put it on. I think it would look really nice. So let's make a box, and this is exaggerated size. I'm going to make it a little smaller than this, so I did that just so you can see it. Alright, let's see what we can do here. I think for the actual box itself, I'm going to maybe use 22 gauge. That seems like a good fit. And let's just, I'm going to arbitrarily decide what size I'm going to make this. So I think we don't want it to go too deep. So we go like, I'm going to do like 7 millimeters. I'm just going to go ahead and cut this whole strip off of here. That'll allow me to kind of decide how long I need this to be in order to get the little box that I want. Let's cut that off. So let's see. So if I want one, that's how deep it is. I'll have to straighten this up a little bit. Maybe about like that big. And if that's the case, need to make a bend. Well, we can do this a couple of ways. The easiest way is to make a three-sided staple-shaped figure out of it, like that. and then take a flat sheet and just solder that to it. So let's do it that way. That's probably the easiest way. But what we can do is we can decide how tall we want it to be. I don't want it to be that thick, but we're going to need to be able to get two pieces of 22 gauge sheet, which is what this stuff is. These two pieces here to fit inside of it. So it could probably be as narrow as like about like that and get away with it, I think. So that being the case, I can use that kind of as a guide to know where to bend it. So if I just take my flat nose pliers here, just bend at a nice 90-degree angle. We figure this is about how wide we want it to make it. We'll take that there. Push this way. I'm going to eyeball this and see if it looks like it's reasonably straight. Okay, so I'm going to try and cut this off pretty close to the same. Okay. And then I'll probably just do a little bit of filing to neaten it up. Okay, before I solder these together, I'm just going to mount this like that and solder it down. But the easiest way to get this little square cut out here would be to do it now. So I'm going to go ahead and find a piece of, I think I'm going to use 12 gauge square for the little button. So let me find a little 12 gauge square. Okay, so let's file that guy nice and flat. Let's try and find the center of this box. By the way, if you're using the standard system, this is a little more than a 1/4 inch wide for the piece that we cut. Okay, so I've made a little mark there. Use that as a guide, and I think we're going to have to go do a little sawing with the jeweler saw. If you've watched any of my videos, you know that the jeweler saw is not my favorite tool. Never been super good at sawing, and I don't do it very often, so it tends to be not my best skill. Alright, so we got a little notch out of there. Alright, now I'm going to use this file to kind of neaten this up a little bit. Kind of want to make sure the geometry of this is in good shape. You haven't, bent it too much and these things around while you were sawing it. Alright, so let's just solder him right on here. I'm glad I'm doing a video on this. I haven't done one of these in a while, so it's good practice for me. Plus, I need to make some bracelets. I don't have too many bracelets right now. I'm gonna start getting ready for summer for shows. I'm just going to pick these right on the outside. Okay, so I got that soldered on. I can just trim it off. I'll probably do a little cleanup filing here. Let me see if I can find a big enough piece of scrap to do the back here. Well, look at that. I can cut a little piece off of here and use that. Some more 22 used for something else. I always try to keep, bigger scraps, because occasionally you run into a situation where you can take a piece off and use it for something else before you end up melting it into balls or freeform castings or whatever you're going to do with it. Alright, so I think probably what I'll do is I'm going to flux the back side of that, flux this, pick a little solder onto this, and then we'll just flip this over on there and solder it down. See if I can do today's video relatively injury-free. Last video I did, I was pounding something and I pounded my finger really good. And then immediately thereafter I burned myself on my pick. So be careful. I occasionally have one of those klutzy days. Okay. I think I got that down on there. I know a lot of people buy findings like this, and that's okay. Occasionally, though, when you're making a unique piece, you want something that sort of matches the style of whatever you're doing, and being able to make your own clasp is kind of a bonus then, because you can, kind of match your style a little bit. The other thing I do is a lot of times when I'm making a bracelet, I try to make the clasp look just like one of the links, and that makes for kind of a seamless looking bracelet. I kind of like that. So if you can conceal your clasp as a link, it's kind of fun. Okay, that's looking pretty good. Alright, one last thing we need to do in here is I need a piece of sheet that goes part of the way across the top here. So I'm going to cut a little strip and see if we can't do that. So it's going to be sitting on here kind of like just like that. So I'll need to solder it down on there like that. So the edge that I want to be facing in is the straight one, so I got to do it like this. The reason I put this other piece of silver there is to keep it level. So I'm going to be putting it on. Just like that. And then heating it to the point where it reflows the solder that we sweated on there earlier until it sticks to the box. Pretty nice puddle there. That's like maybe sticking a millimeter or millimeter and a half in. 1/16 of an inch. It's all fluxed and everything, so I shouldn't need to flux it again. I just need to heat it up to the point where that solder flows. So I'm going to focus mostly on the sheet down on the bottom and sort of avoid the top piece. That looks pretty good. It had slid a little bit, so I was trying to get it repositioned. Here we go. And it didn't solder the other thing, which is sort of nice. Got it on there pretty straight. Need to now, this little piece in the middle, I'm going to snip that out of there. You can't really get shears in there very easily, so, and I know I'm using the wrong tool for something, but I'm gonna anyway. Because sometimes you just gotta live dangerously. Alright, so now, spend a little time getting that all evened up nice. So we got a little hollow box with a slot and a little stopping point there. Let's put some kind of connector on the back end here, so if you want, just do something simple like a 14 gauge square. Let's just do kind of a got this piece made. Now we need to make the other side. So I'll use some more of that 22 gauge. I can kind of measure about how wide, because it's going to have to fit inside of there. So I can use that as a gauge. All right there. That's how wide I want it to be. Now I want it to be about twice as long as the depth of this thing. So if that's one width, maybe a little bit longer, we can cut it down to what we need. But there. So, like I said, I'm going to leave myself a little extra here. Now, let's try to find the middle of this one. Again, these sizes are just based on what I'm doing right here. There's no, you can make it to whatever scale you want. Sometimes you need to bend something sort of thickish. Get better leverage on the table with this. Once you got it most of the way, I find it both useful and therapeutic to pound it flat. Okay, now I'm going to try and pry this back apart just a little bit. I usually keep these little T-pins around. I grew up in the 70s and my mom did macrame, and she used these things in macrame to pin things to a board when you were tying knots in them or whatever. So that's, I think of them as macrame pins. So I was just pushing that in there so I could spread this out a little bit. Push this down right into that slot. It should kind of spread it open a little bit. I was using the flat nose pliers there. So this is going to be popping in there, and I don't really want to do it quite yet because I don't think it's short enough yet. Because there's a little thickness of the sheet back here, so when I hold it next to it like that, it's going to have to sit behind this little edge up here and still fit in there. So I think I need to take a little bit off of the top here. I'm going to solder a little piece of square wire onto the base. I'm going to cut this just a little bit longer than it needs to be. I can trim it down after I'm done. So the easiest way would be to just sweat a little bit of solder onto this here. And just push them up against each other and then reheat them to the point where it flows again. Kind of take your pick where you sweated the solder, and I could do it right there, or I could do it here. Doesn't really matter too much. It's spread along the entire length of it, so it's probably good. There we go. I didn't get the length perfect, but close. You can get them to where they pop in there tightly like that. I could go back and resolder a new thing on here, but I don't think I'm going to. Okay, one thing I do want to do though is, in order to have something you can push down on, we need a little button sticking up there. So we need to solder on a little square. We just need to have it sticking up off the edge there a little bit. So I'm going to sweat a little solder onto the bottom of that. I'm going to flux this in a minute, but I want to leave the black dot there for a few more minutes. I'll get this ready. Okay, now I need to flux this a little. All this soldering after we bent it has annealed it again, so it wasn't as springy as it was. So you might want to do a little work hardening when you get towards the end. There we go. Okay. So here's what you might do. Could just cut this off and leave it as a little square button like that, which I think is fine. I think what might be more fun though would be to either mount a little bit bigger square or circle on there, or mount a bezel on there with a stone, a little tiny stone or something. That would be cool. I just pop it in there, like that, push the button, take it out of there. So right now it needs a little fine tuning, and I'll do that off camera probably. But that's basically how to make a box clasp. There's a zillion variations of it. So, but that's a real simple, straightforward one. The edge of this little bent up piece catches on this lip on the inside, and this little square piece allows you to push down on it to extract it from the little box that we created like that. So. That's one way. I was earlier this afternoon. I was playing around because I hadn't done these in a while, and so I made a couple. The first one is basically the same thing that I just did, but if you're one of those people who does multiple strand bracelets, this is basically the same idea, except I did a little wider box, and I put a little handle on top of it like that with a double notch like that. So push it in there, it pops into place. You got 3 different strands. To open it, you just push it and do that. So I was kind of pleased with how that one came out. I hadn't done one exactly like that before, but I think it'll clean up nice. The other one, which I was really excited about, I saw somewhere and I decided to try and copy it, and it's this one here. And this one still isn't cleaned up nice or anything, but it's basically a piece of square wire going into a square tube with these little latches on either side. So you open those up and it slides out of a little socket like that. So it wasn't terribly hard to make, and I'll probably do a video on how to make this one specifically, but you can extrapolate just by looking at it what I had to do it, probably, if you've done a little bit of this. So basically it was creating this square tube that fit right around a piece of, this is 10 gauge square wire, and then I wrapped the top of that so it kind of has a stopping place. Added some little tubes to create little hinges for these, solder on some little balls on either the top there and the bottom, and then on either end I soldered a jump ring to attach your chain to. And then after sliding these together, I closed these. These were not soldered yet, and I wrapped them around there to get an idea how long. And then I pulled it all back apart, soldered those closed, and then I fitted them to make them tight like that by squeezing them on either side there. So, but I'm really excited about that. It's really secure and tight, and it looks really kind of clean and neat. So I was enthused about that one. But you know, there's all sorts of things you could do to these too. You can embellish them with decorations. And like I said, if it was me, I'd probably try to do one that matched the links of whatever bracelet I was making, because that sometimes is fun to try and conceal it that way. But I hope you enjoyed watching these. I had fun making these today. It's been a while since I played around with stuff like this. So tell me in the comments, you know, how do you do box clasps? I'm curious. I saw a really cool one online somewhere, and it's a double box. It's got 2 different buttons, one on either side across from each other, with little tiny stones mounted on the little buttons, and the 2 different springy parts that popped into a little tube. So I might try that at some point and maybe do a video on that. But clasps can be fun. They can also be a pain if you're doing a lot of production. So, you know, for the big unique piece that you make, it might be fun to make a unique clasp. And these ones aren't super hard, so give it a try. You know, you might find that these are something you like. So. Okay, that was the video on 3 different kinds of box clasps. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to hit the like button before you leave. I'd love to have you subscribe. There's a growing amount of content here. I put out 3 videos per week. Generally a big project on Saturday, another project on Tuesday, and then some sort of a tip or a tutorial on a very specific aspect of silversmithing on Thursdays. Make sure to check out the links in my video description. There's a link to my Patreon where you can sign up for more exclusive content. There's also a link to buy me a coffee if you feel like showing your appreciation and keeping me caffeinated. And then, of course, there's my website link, so make sure to check that out too. So, thanks for visiting. I appreciate you watching. Happy silversmithing. Take care.